So our podcast is about your journey in music and how you got to where you are now, which is kind of fitting because your new record is all about, going back to your roots. So I want to talk to you about that if that's cool with you.
Yeah, dude, absolutely.
Right on. So you're from Detroit, right?
I'm from Detroit. Yeah, I'm from Grosse Pointe specifically, just outside of Detroit. It's like 2 minutes. And yeah, man, I grew up like with parents that love to play music around the house and have parties and events. And I think I was just around this like party atmosphere, not like a unhealthy childhood, but like I was just like, I just saw my parents having like these like cool get-togethers on weekends. And the thing that was, orchestrating, those nights was the music they were playing. And so they were playing like Motown music and, Jackson 5, the Temptations, all that good stuff. And that was like the first introduction to music I kind of got into. And so like being, 3 years old, I could just remember myself dancing along and people, clapping for me and like cheering me on. But it, I really didn't know what music was, obviously, but I was like, I think like enamored by what it was doing to unite people. Not to get too deep at like 3 years old, but like, I feel like I was really attached to like, oh my gosh, like where are all these adults? Why are they moving around? Like, what is this thing they're like connected by? I think that was like really planted in me subconsciously at a young age. And then I got older and started to get into my own tastes of music, got into like Third Eye Blind and Jack Johnson and Kid Cudi, just like a lot of random stuff. And so I think when it got to the point for me to make my own stuff, which was around my, like, I was writing raps like my sophomore year of high school, but I don't think I really started like making music seriously until I got into college. Okay. And yeah, so I think when it was time for me to like make my own stuff, it was just kind of a melting pot of all that stuff that I was sort of raised on and grew up listening to. And I didn't really even know I could, like, I rapped at first, like I said, but then I also like slowly eased into singing. It was the help of my good friend and producer ayokay, who I grew up with, and he went to the University of Michigan. I went to Michigan State, and we made our first project together just before we graduated. And he kind of gave me the courage to start singing a bit. And yeah, man, we put a project out on SoundCloud, and it was like really received well, like in the college area, but that was kind of like the extent of it. And then we just kind of pushed more of it and eventually got signed by Columbia Records after a song we put out called Kings of Summer, which really like took off at the moment. And yeah, sorry, that was a lot I just gave you there, but it was just.
Oh, no, yeah. I love that. That was amazing. I want to rewind back a bit if that's cool. Like as a kid, you said 3 years old, you were surrounded by music, but when did you start like playing? Did you take piano lessons at all or guitar lessons, anything like that as a kid?
No, dude. So I mean, I think I took drum, like I drummed in my like elementary school's like band or whatever, but it was like just the snare drum. It wasn't like the kit or anything. It was just literally me like tapping. And that was maybe the extent, like literally probably the furthest I had gone into like training myself musically. So I think that's what's really sort of curious is that, or like fascinating, I guess, is because I didn't really grow up in a musical household. Like, I don't have like a lineage of like musicians in my family, or nor did my parents like kind of push onto me like I had to learn instruments. I just think I was just a fan of the music before anything, and I think that's kind of what got me into it. And I would sing in the shower and stuff, and I was really into like creative writing and stuff, and like in school and high school. And I think I just sort of merged those two like interests of mine one day and like wrote something, and it probably sucked, but I was like very much in love with the process of like rhyming words and stuff and like putting it over a instrumental. So yeah, dude, I don't know. I think one day it sort of clicked for me to try it, and I just kind of fell in love with it. Yeah. Right
on. Yeah. Well, you said in your sophomore year of high school is when you first like started kind of rapping. Is that kind of what happened?
So myself and my best friend Jason, who, really was like my first sort of like, sidekick in all this. We had a little rap group called Mixed Minds in high school, and we were writing raps over just YouTube beats, that we found on the internet, just illegally downloading them and everything as one high school kid does. And yeah, we would just like record at his house. He had like, I think it was GarageBand, and we just, again, I don't think we thought it was too like crazy, but we just genuinely had so much fun doing it. And then some of our friends found out, and they were like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And, that was like the first spark of like, oh, there's actually people that, kind of like this stuff. So But yeah, dude, honestly, again, it just started very organically. It was just a way for us to kind of hang out in a different space and try something new. So yeah.
Nice. With that first group, did you guys ever like perform? Did you do like the school talent show or anything like that? Or it was just all like between you guys?
Yeah, dude, we were terrified. Hell no. We were not stepping on a stage. But he actually, though, when I went to college and I got booked for like my first show ever, he actually was like my hype man for like the early days. So
wow.
It was cool that he got to like experience a little bit of that like stage element with me, like in the beginning stages of things. And eventually I got a band and everything, and I focused more on like singing. And so the hype man wasn't really necessary anymore. But he got to do some cool shows with me at the beginning, which I'll never forget. And yeah, just a cool thing for us to share.
Rad. When did you start? Like, was that after you put the EP out and you were in college and everything when you started performing?
Yeah, so we put this EP out in 2015 called Change of Scenery. So the new album's called Change of Scenery 2. And
yeah,
this was the first project that I'd ever put out like as like an original body of work. So original production that ayokay, my buddy, did, and singing on my part for the most part. There was a little bit of rapping in there, but I think I'd like finally sort of committed to a sound which was like melodic rapping, singing, like don't really know what to call it. But yeah, we committed to it. We made 6 songs and we put it out, and we got booked like locally around, I went to school in East Lansing, Michigan. And so we would do like local dive bar shows. And I would go to Ann Arbor sometimes, where Michigan's located, the university. And we do some, fraternity stuff, or, whoever I guess was willing to book us, we would just accept it. And we weren't getting really paid at all. It was just exposure for us and a chance to really see if it would like translate in a live setting.
Oh, rad.
So yeah, man, it was just here and there, nothing too, sporadic or nothing too, I should say, like consistent. And that being said, I had to get a job out of college. So I actually worked at an insurance company right out of college, and I was like still pursuing music, but my parents were like, look, like we love that you're passionate about this, but like, let's like focus on something in the meantime that like, will make you some money. And so, while they were really cool about it, they still were like, all right, we want you to dream, but like, we also want you to like function,
get an education. Sure.
Yeah.
So did you end up finishing college?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I graduated in 2015. The same year that the project came out. Yeah. And I got a degree in advertising. So clearly the same thing I'm doing now.
Right. Well, it works out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, how did you meet ayokay? Like, were you guys friends prior to, starting to put music together?
We're friends. We're more like acquaintances. I mean, I've known him since like 3rd grade. So we weren't like, we weren't like buddy, but like we were in the same classes. I always knew who he was. We would, hang out at recess, play sports, whatever, like little kid stuff. But we weren't, but to be totally like honest, like we weren't the greatest of friends. We weren't like enemies, but we just weren't that close. And as we got older, I think I had caught wind that someone had told me he was working on stuff as a producer. And what's funny is the extent of that was like, he was just basically downloading music and chopping it up on his like Logic Pro software he had, and wasn't really doing much producing. It was just more like he had software, and he could record,
how to use it.
Yeah, he could record people. Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's a real producer. And so I went over to his house one day after seeing him like after the freshman year of college was over. That summer I had saw him back in town, and we, I think, had exchanged like, oh, like, how are you? How's school going? And I think we were just like, oh, I heard you're doing music. He like found out I was sort of rapping and whatever. So I was like, all right, let's hang out one day and see what happens. And so that was the first day we like really recorded something at his house. And again, we had like took a beat from YouTube, but it was like the first moment we were like, oh wow, we have kind of a chemistry going, and like, let's kind of see this out and see what we can do. And sure enough, that was sort of the start of everything. But
wow. And that's what you guys put the record together, Change of Scenery. And then how does it start? Like, you put it up on SoundCloud, or you put it up on, like, how did it start gaining traction?
SoundCloud. Yeah. SoundCloud. I mean, for us, that was really like the best way for us to get our music out there. And I still say to this day, platforms like SoundCloud that cater to independent artists who, don't have connections to the industry. I think it's such a great way to just get your exposure out there. Now you have stuff like TikTok that, really helps people get their name out in any way possible. But for us, that was, back in the day, that was SoundCloud. And yeah, so that's where we really started to see like fans, like followers. And we started to get pretty excited about it. And Yeah, dude, the SoundCloud was the real way we got our name out there. And then, like I said, Kings of Summer, which was a song that he put out that I was featured on, was the one that really started to like take off unexpectedly. And it actually hit #1 on Spotify's global viral chart, which is now a huge deal. Like if that happens to you, like that's basically the #1 song in the world. But at the time, you know, Spotify, it wasn't what it is now. It wasn't like this monopoly of a business that like really just dominates the industry. It was still kind of getting its legs. And so while we hit #1, it wasn't like our lives changed instantly, but I will say that's when we definitely had labels kind of contacting us and getting, you know, at least asking us questions like, you know, are you interested in, you know, signing a record deal or whatever. Right. So it was the moment where my parents were like, okay, I think this can actually become like a real career. So yeah, man, that was the tipping point, I would say.
Yeah. So you were working at you said you worked at an insurance company?
Yeah. So what happened?
So you were there during all this when that was all happening?
During all this. Yeah. I had a coworker. I can still remember this. Like one day I was just like in my cubicle. I'd like lean back and I was like, hey man, like my song is like, it's doing pretty well at Spotify. It's like #1 on this global chart. He's like, oh, it's cool. Okay. Like it just goes back to his desk. I'm like, all right. Like no one really gives a shit, you know? So right. It was definitely a humbling experience because like, I didn't really have, even myself though, I didn't really have like a real grasp of like how cool that was. I just thought it was like, I thought it was cool, but I think looking back now, it was a pretty big milestone. And it's no wonder that labels contacted us because now I kind of understand the importance of being high up on like a playlist like that. But no, man, it was a very interesting balance of like, you know, I would play shows on the weekends and this was at a point where I was actually starting to get booked like outside of Michigan, like playing in Ohio and most of the Midwest essentially. But I would be playing these college shows on the weekend and I'd come back to work on Monday and, you know, just get yelled at by my boss. And I was like, okay, this is like, I can't really do both of these things. Like one of these has to go. So I chose music. It was just way more exciting.
Probably a smart choice.
Yeah. So it was fascinating, dude. It was just I think I'm glad I got to experience like the 9-to-5 desk job life because I think it further kind of ingrained in me that like it just wasn't for me. And right. I'm happy I got a taste of it. Like I said, just to kind of like know what I didn't want to do. And for me, that was really important because I love music, but I was still a little unsure of like where my, you know, what I was going to do with my life. So it was good to know like, okay, well, that's not it. You know, this insurance stuff is not it. So I chose music.
Do you remember going back to work and being like, you know what, I'm going to put my 2 weeks in. I just signed a deal with Columbia Records.
Yeah. I told my boss, I was like, and, you know, thank God, like bless her heart. My boss was so cool about it and wasn't, you know, it just didn't take it in a negative way at all. I was like, look, this is nothing personal. I kind of need to see this out and see what happens. And she was like, please don't, you know, just send us a postcard when you get to LA and stuff. And they'll still come to my shows in Michigan, which is really awesome. And it's cool to like have people back at that company still, you know, supporting what I do. And I'm super grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that guy that you sat behind you in the cubicle is probably telling all of his friends, like, "Oh, yeah, I knew Quinn XCII, like when he used to sit behind me."
Yeah, maybe. And I was the one always asking for help with my job, so it's kind of funny that, you know, yeah, I didn't do a great job at the company. Like I didn't make them much money at all, so I think it was probably best for both of us for me to leave.
Sure,
you know, it was a win-win for sure. Yeah,
that's amazing. So then you signed the deal, and tell me about that moment. That must have been huge. Like these major labels are contacting you, and you're like.
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was definitely a surreal experience to just, you know, to seem like I was on, you know, the radar of these major labels and these companies that, you know, work with some of the biggest names to ever be in music. Like in Columbia specifically, they have such a impressive, like historic roster of clients. And for me, just to be in a meeting with them and just to like have them interested in what I was doing, I thought was cool in itself. I was like, I don't even really, I mean, I want to get a record deal, but I was like, this is just amazing alone. And so, yeah, it was a really humbling experience. And I think I appreciated that I was from the Midwest during all that, because I just think the way I was raised was to kind of like keep your head down and stay humble and work hard and don't, you know, count your chickens before they hatch. And for me, I was like, I was trying to soak up that experience of talking to these labels, but also not get too in the clouds about it and, and, you know, try to remain the same person that I've been. So, but yeah, you know, it was a great fit. Columbia seemed like they just knew exactly what I wanted to do. And they gave me total creative control of like my music. And they had actually approached me while I already had like a little bit of a fan base going. So they're kind of like, look, do your thing. Like, we don't want to tamper with what's already working. So we just want to be a part of what's going on, and you just continue what you're doing. And it's kind of been the narrative for the last 5 years that I've been with them. So super lucky just to be with people that, you know, respect that aspect of what I do, but you know, they also, they don't want to fix what's not broken, I guess.
Sure. They're not going to try to change you if it's already, you know, doing something, obviously.
Right.
So you put out the first record you put out with them was The Story of Us. And was it like, tell me about, okay, so you had this, you know, huge record, or this EP you guys put out, and now you have this major label backing you. Were you like kind of nervous? Like, tell me about putting these songs together. Was it like, how am I going to follow up what we already did? Did you ever have that doubt in your mind?
Yeah. I mean, kind like yes and no. I weirdly just did. I think what's great about being like the new kid on the block, sort of like the new artist on a label, is there's really no expectation for the most part. Like they didn't expect much of it. And not to say that as like they didn't have confidence in me, but as a new artist, you know, you kind of just have to roll the dice and see what happens. And if it works out, then great. Then it's probably a great little love story that the label and the artist will have for the next few years. But if not, it's, you know, it's whatever. And, you know, plenty of times artists just it doesn't translate once they get to a major label. And so for me, I kind of thought of it that way. I was like, look, I have really nothing to lose. Let's just see what happens. And I'll just trust the people that have been liking the music will continue to support it, even though I am on, you know, even though I've sold out, as some people would say.
Do people even say that anymore? I remember when I was like in high school, it was like Green Day sold out and like all this stuff. And it's like, now it's just like, who cares?
Stick it to the man. No, I don't really know. I don't think people say that anymore, but I definitely got a little bit of that, believe it or not, though, back then. And it was whatever, you know, but so no, I to answer your question, like, I think I approached the album as, you know, look, it's either going to work out or it's not, but it was cool while it lasted, I guess. And, you know, it thank God it did, you know, it did all right. But I would say actually the one thing I was nervous about was the fact that this was the first time, you know, moving to LA and putting a project out with a real like record label. It was the first time that Alex, ayokay, and I weren't going to work together fully. We kind of, because he also got signed to Columbia as like an artist as well. So
it wasn't like a mutual thing. Like, they didn't sign you as together.
No. So we both got separate deals, and he was an artist and I was too. And we kind of at that moment started focusing on our individual projects. So it was the first time that I made an album without him kind of in my corner. So if anything, that was what I was nervous about, was just how am I going to, like, am I still going to have this magic that him and I have created with other people that I haven't worked with before? And I realized that, you know, there was still something there. I still to this day prefer working with him over anyone. I just think we have like I said, a really good chemistry and a history that, you know, not many people can make better than that, I guess. But I did realize though that I was capable to work with other people, and I was a good enough writer at the time where I could take what I had learned as a musician and channel that with other producers in these other sessions I was having. So for me, it was a learning experience, if anything, that I could kind of, you know, be cut from the leash a bit and not have to work with this one person my whole life, and just know that I could do this with other people. And so that's what I did. You know, I worked with like 3 to 4 different producers on that record, and we made a pretty cool, you know, cohesive body of work that it's still some of my biggest music to this day. Like that album really, you know, was sort of the starting point for me. And yeah, so I always look back at that as sort of like the moment that I kind of branched off into my own sort of individual lane as like Quinn, and not just like Quinn and ayokay. But even that being said though, that's why it's so special to now come back with him years later and make this project, because I think we both have learned so much in these past 4 years that we can now take what we've learned and just make a better project than what we made to begin with. So it's really cool. It's a very full circle moment, kind of.
Sure. Yeah, that's amazing. I was about to say that, because it's kind of like you hadn't worked with him right on the next 3 releases you did. This is the first time you worked with him since the first EP you guys did.
Yeah, which is really, really nuts. Yeah. Yeah, dude. And again, it wasn't like nothing personal. We always stayed in contact. I showed him songs I was working on. He showed me his songs. Like we would ask for advice, but it was just a little period of time where we just were kind of figuring out like who we want to be as musicians. And And I think recently with the pandemic, ironically, it was like a moment where, you know, everyone slowed down a bit in the world. And I think a lot of people's perspectives changed on sort of what they want to do with their lives, at least for me. And I was just thinking, you know, like this would be such a great time for me to kind of like rekindle, not only like just the music with Alex, but like just my friendship and get closer to him and just try to make a project that sort of represents like why we got into music in the first place, which was really just to do it, to have fun and see what happens and kind of be naive about the whole thing and not really expect anything from it. And so that's what we did. We went to Rhode Island in Newport, where his family actually has a house there.
Oh,
and
cool.
They like they let us use the house for like 2 weeks. And it's funny because that's actually like, we worked at his parents' place in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, when we were like first making the very first EP. And so to kind of now go back to another house that they own was very fitting.
Sure.
I feel like we work good in that environment. So we joke though, we're like, I don't think we're gonna be able to do this forever. Like we're probably gonna have to get our own spot and not, you know, I don't think we can ask his mom and dad. We use their house forever, but it definitely, there's something about that house environment that kind of takes it back to the college days. And it reminds us of sort of who we are and where we came from. And so I think that was like a really big factor into just making like a cool project. And two, just to get out of LA was really refreshing, and, you know, just not have to worry about what people were going to say about the album or not even say about it, but just, I think sometimes when you go into studio sessions in LA, it kind of feels like work, and it feels, you see all these like really shiny like instruments and a lot of expensive dials and knobs that I have no idea. I don't know what they do. And I think if you can just strip it back for once and just kind of like sit on the sofa and be in a living room with just a laptop and like a keyboard and a guitar, like that's kind of all you really need. And I was reminded of that, which is really nice.
With the pandemic, where were you at prior to that all happening? Were you like on a tour, or were you in LA working on new music? Like how did that affect you directly?
I was in LA. So I was in the it's funny because I like, my last album didn't come out that long ago. It came out like right, I think when COVID was really starting to like take wind here in the States. And we were gearing up for a tour, as most musicians were. And sure enough, you know, I think that quickly fell out the window because we just had seen when everything was going on. And so I put the album out and I was like, all right, it looks like I'm going to have to like take a little break from touring. And so I spent the next few months after that, just, you know, promoting it via stuff like this, like Zoom, but not really getting a chance to like go out and see the country and play shows. And so I took a lot of time off. So for the next few months, I was just kind of like, you know, changing, just, you know, reading more, meditating, just kind of like getting more comfortable with silence and not a lot of more downtime, I guess. I was taking some sessions and writing some music, but nothing was really sticking to me. Like nothing was really like, you know, hitting me in my feels, I guess, and really hitting like that, like scratching that itch that I was trying to like, I was searching for. Cause I think once I put out an album, I'm always ready to do the next thing. And one day, I don't know if Alex and I were talking or what, but what kind of sprouted that conversation of let's make a project together. But I think we just realized at some point, we're like, this is probably a good moment for us to, pending COVID tests and, you know, getting,
sure, of course,
taking the right precautions. Like maybe this is a good chance for us to, you know, work on something again. And sure enough, we did a couple sessions at his place here in LA and we made a few ideas, but what's funny is we made 3 ideas, one of which is going to be on the album. But then I think we just kind of were like, why don't we just turn this into an album? Like, it seems like we're on a roll here. Let's take a proper trip somewhere and like make a project. And yeah, the rest is kind of history.
That's amazing. And so the first song you guys released was Stay Next to Me. And then you had Chelsea Cutler on that song. Do you have any other features on the record?
Yeah. So Chelsea's on that record or that song. And Alex is actually featured as a vocalist on one song, which is really cool.
Is that the first time he's sang on an album of yours?
Yeah. And he himself is a great singer, and he's one of those guys that can just kind of teach himself things. Like he's very smart, and like he'll probably, you know, I hate kind of saying this, but yeah, I gotta give him credit at some point. And I think he's one of those guys that like taught himself music essentially. Like he didn't really listen to music growing up, which is very, very ironic. And he taught himself the software, and I think he just approaches music from like an engineer's mind, I guess. And so with music or with singing, he like went to a vocal coach and, you know, just really like soaked in everything that he was being taught. And now he's got a great voice. So yeah, he sang on one of the songs that I'm on, and that song also features Jeremy Zucker, which is really cool.
Oh, right.
And Alexander 23 is also the last feature on the album. So, and those are all pretty close friends of mine. So I think it's a really cool thing to like make an album that Alex and I feel is super like near and dear to us, but also have people,
it's all good.
but also have people on the album, like vocalists who are like pretty close friends of ours. So it's very, very fitting. So yeah, man. So there's only 4 features on the album, but they're all really special people to me and great singers. So I think it's
with that, like for like Chelsea Cutler, for example, like was you put the song out, or not put the song out, but when you put the song together, was she like in a different studio and like sent you the files over the internet? Is that kind of how you guys built the songs and the features?
Pretty much. Like it's not more complicated than that. Yeah. I literally just texted her. I was like, and I think this is like one of the blessings of having friends in your life that are also musicians, because you can just be like, yo, I made this song. Can I share it to you? Like, can I text it to you and see what you think? She's like, yeah, send it over. And she was just instantly into it and recorded her vocals pretty soon after that. And that was kind of it, and mm-hmm. I think sometimes getting collaborators to hop on a song can be a little bit of a process, but I think when it's people close to you at this point, I can just sort of reach out as simple as a text. And more often than not, at least the people I think I'm not going to send it to people that I think they won't like it. And so with Chelsea, I think she and I have worked on enough stuff now where I kind of know what she's going to be into. And mm-hmm. I think vice versa. So yeah, she was into it and just texted me back and she's like, all right, here it is. And we're like, okay, cool.
I was going to say, working with pros like her, I'm sure you just send her the track and she just does her take and sends it back to you. And you're like, okay, that works.
Perfect. Yeah. Sounds amazing. Yeah.
That's amazing. And now I want to talk to you about your most recent single from the record, My Wife and Two Dogs, that just came out.
Yeah.
Last, few weeks ago. Tell me about that song.
Yeah. That's a fun one. That's definitely a more, hip hop inspired song. Mm-hmm. And I was a little nervous to put it on the album because I didn't want to be like too jokey of a song. Like it's not too jokey, but it's in comparison to everything else on the album, it definitely has the most sort of laid back approach. But I think that's what, fans of mine enjoy is just, I think they like that I don't take myself too seriously. And I think a song like this definitely fits my personality. So yeah, the song is literally about just like the process of going to Rhode Island and making the album. And it's kind of a song about the album, which is sort of funny. And so we made that and instantly we're like, all right, here we have something special. But again, I was a little reluctant to be like, okay, this is going to be like a single. I mean, like, I didn't even know if I wanted the album, let alone a single. And I just think we came to a point where like, you know what, screw it. Like, I think I have a good judge. Like, I'm a good reader of what my fans are into. And I think they'll like this and it's been getting a good reception. So yeah, it was definitely a really fun one to make. Probably the most fun song to make on the album.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the song. And speaking of your humor and stuff, I love the little trailer you put out for the EP.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like so goofy, like your little minute thing of like, and that handsome guy next to him is me.
Yeah, that's the thing, dude. I think I try to like run on a fine line between like taking my music seriously, because I do take it very seriously, but also like showing people my personality and being able to like incorporate that humor in ways that I think people will enjoy. So I think when I get to promote the music, that's my time to kind of be silly and do what I want. But when it comes to writing it, I still try to like talk about serious things and take it seriously, like, because it is my job, but I think what's great is like, I can be a little more humorous when it comes to just like getting it out there, which you clearly have seen. So
yeah, dude, it's really good.
Thank you,
man. And I appreciate you talking with me today, man. This has been awesome. I do have one more question for you before I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
For sure, man. I would say my number one piece of advice I can give, and it's pretty cliche, but I think, more often than not, the cliche stuff is always the stuff that is true. It's just, staying authentic to yourself and not getting too swept up in trends or what other people are doing. Because I think authenticity is like a timeless quality. And I think no one's ever going to get sick of someone who's just themselves and is genuine. So for me, I try to channel that with everything I do. Like we said, like promoting the music or the stuff that I write, like I try to be myself all the time. And I think people will, whether they like the music or they don't like you or whatever industry you're in, I think it's hard to like not respect someone who is always themselves and authentic. And so I would say, yeah, that would say like whatever you're doing, not just a musician, but just whatever you're doing, just try to be yourselves and be genuine. And I'm sure good things will follow if that's just kind of how you live your life. So.